finest form of democracy that you could ever envision, greatly because nobody really could guess the results. You know, I can usually guess the results of an election in Jordan. I can usually guess the results of an election in the Kurdish part of Syria, or in the ISIS part of Syria, okay? Or in the Alawi part of Syria. Usually I can guess the results of an election in Hezbollah, okay? Usually I can guess the results of an election in Hamastan. Usually I can guess the results of an election in Egypt. Not to mention Saudi Arabia. Not to mention elections in the Gulf states. How about an election in Iran? Can we guess the results of an election in Iran? The only country in the Middle East where you really have a problem not knowing who the person is who's going to come out a winner is the only democracy in the Middle East. This morning, in Haaretz, Ari Shavit, who, by the way, was at IDC Herzliya 72 hours ago, he was at IDC Herzliya when we named the Tyomkin School of Economics at IDC Herzliya. And Ari Shavit basically was the moderator of two people, basically. It was Tony Blair speaking there, together with Ehud Barak. And Ari Shavit was the moderator. And basically they were all saying, isn't it great that there's now going to be a big change in Israel? Because the polls were basically declaring that Herzog, together with Tzipi Livni, were going to win this election by at least 3 or 4 mandates because of the polls that were taking place. And it looked like the gap was even growing further than that. Again, this is democracy. What Ari Shavit said in Haaretz today, he said that the election was an earthquake. He used the words earthquake. He used the words 1977. This is Ari Shavit. He's an objective guy. He's not some sort of an extremist. He's an objective bystander, and this is what he was saying. He was basically saying that the results of this election were a big shock. A big shock to the state of Israel. A big shock to the Labour Party. A big shock to a whole bunch of people in Israel. A big shock to the Likudniks in Israel. Facetious, but I agree with him, okay? Some of the people in Israel decided that Netanyahu is now going to be an emperor, okay? An emperor, that's the word that he used, okay? A little facetiously, but that's the word that he used as part of this earthquake. Because between you and me, I did not think the results of this election were going to be the way they were. I was stunned by the results of this election. And I think we have to analyze a little bit of what happened here. Because when you take a look at the results of this election, by the way, you basically see that the Likud received 30 mandates, and the Zionist Union received 24, and the Joint Arab List received 13, and Yesh Atid received 11, and Kulanu, which is a brand new political party in Israel, running on the ticket of lowering the price of housing, more or less, and a whole bunch of other social issues with a fellow named Kahalon, who is a half Likudnik and half social service activist, but now he's a full Likudnik because he's coming back to be with them. They got 10 mandates. The Jewish home of Bennett, you might have heard of Bennett, he received 8 mandates. Shas received 7 mandates. United Torah Judaism received 6. Yisrael Beitenu of Lieberman, your boss, Lieberman, he received 6 mandates. Meretz received 5 mandates. By the way, Meretz was supposed to receive 4 mandates, and because of the vote of the Israeli soldiers, they moved from 4 to 5 votes. We have to remember where we're living in the Middle East. We have to remember all of those towns that do face rockets. And we have to remember Iran. By the way, I have a feeling that Jews who originally come from the Middle East might have heard stories from their parents and grandparents about what sometimes happened to them in the Middle East. That may be something. It could also be that Jews who come from the former Soviet Union and come from a certain regime think that you need to be strong, and you need to be powerful, and you need to have a backbone, and you're more security-oriented, and they believe that even though the cost of living is high, and even though their socioeconomic background is low, they're still more scared of ISIS, or more scared of Hamas, or more scared of Hezbollah, than they are of the fact that they can't buy an apartment. Okay? You have to think in those terms, because that's something that I'm thinking of. I mean, I don't know if I'm right, but it's part of the way I analyze this. Now, there were a bunch of other things that happened in this election which I think backfired. There was an exaggeration of attacking Netanyahu and his wife personally. Now, you can attack them once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. But when you attack them 20 times and 30 times and 40 times, it starts creating a little bit of a backlash. In fact, if you read certain newspapers in Israel, they were so tilted to one side or another that the credibility of those newspapers ceased to exist. I mean, I remember, for example, reading in Yediot Ahronot that the demonstration of the right-wing people in Kikar Rabin was half the size of the demonstration of the left wing, which took place a week before. And by the way, the coverage in Yediot Ahronot of the right-wing demonstration was on the 4th page of Yediot Ahronot, as if it hardly took place. If you read the newspaper of Israel Hayom of Sheldon Adelson, then the left-wing demonstration was probably inside the newspaper much more, and probably minimizing the number of people who came to the left-wing demonstration, and putting the right-wing demonstration completely at the top. The media in Israel was tilted, and in many, many ways, in my personal view, in many, many ways, not as credible as some media are in the West, okay? And some of the journalists, like Ari Shapid and others, are admitting it. And they're saying, you know, we went a little too far here. The other thing, which I think really backfired, the Likud put together some video clip where they're comparing public workers who are on strike to members of the Hamas. Okay? That was like one of the most bizarre and dumb things, okay, that any political party could do, because they got the backup of workers' committees in Israel aircraft industries and in all kinds of different companies, and all of these different people who were demonstrating in the south because they're being fired and there's unemployment and everything else. They started coming up to Jerusalem to demonstrate in front of Netanyahu's house. And for 2 or 3 days on TV, simple workers were saying, what, you're comparing us to Hamasniks? I don't know, I don't think they went to a Madison Avenue public relations firm, okay, to get that idiocy. On the other hand, an Israeli writer at the demonstration of the left gets up and says, we don't need a whole bunch of people who kiss mezuzahs, okay? Okay? We don't need a whole bunch of people who kiss mezuzot. And we don't need a whole bunch of people who go to visit holy graves. Kivrei tzadikim. Okay? We don't need those kinds of people to lead us in Israel. We basically need to get rid of those people, because those people believe in witchcraft and everything else. What they don't realize is that in a place like Beersheba, or Dimona, or Holon, or Bat Yam, or Ashkelon, there are Jews of Middle Eastern background, not Russians in this case. And I'm generalizing right now, I'm generalizing. But many, many Jews who come from Middle Eastern countries are used to making Kiddush on Friday night. They think it's nice to make Kiddush. They might go to a soccer game on Shabbat in the afternoon. They might go to the beach on Shabbat in the morning. And by the way, they like to kiss a mezuzah because their father or grandfather taught them to kiss a mezuzah. And when someone's at a demonstration of 50,000 people says something like that, you get the people's backup. Just like when you compare workers to Hamasniks. But the question is, how many people are you getting the backup of in these various situations? There's another thing that happened during these elections, which maybe some people are now saying was a mistake. There was an anti-Bibi campaign. And basically, it wasn't, what do I really believe in? What am I going to do? For weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, there was an anti-Bibi campaign in Israel. Generals and members of the security forces who are retired, former heads of the Mossad, okay, were all signing things in the newspapers and coming out against Bibi. It was all against Bibi. Bibi is crazy. Bibi is an extremist. His wife is a Dumbo, okay, etc., 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 etc. All we were hearing is anti-Bibi stuff. Okay, and so basically, frequently there wasn't too much room for ideology. Okay, it reached a situation, by the way, and this is a crazy situation, where the people who do the polls in Israel and do the surveys in Israel were interviewing people according to models of, let's say, 600 or 700 people at once in order to find out what people are voting in the polls. People were embarrassed to say that they're voting Likud. This anti-Bibi campaign, this anti-Likud campaign made some people who maybe think highly of themselves or consider themselves to be intelligent or whatever it is, to not want to tell their friends or even people who survey polls what they're really voting. And so the pollsters got it wrong. That's what the pollsters are saying. The pollsters are saying these people didn't tell us the truth, okay, about who they're actually voting for. And so you have to take a look, and I'm generalizing right now. I'm generalizing, but I'm being objective. I'm generalizing, but I'm being objective, okay? My generalization here would say this. A majority of the people in Israel, or many of the people in Israel, in my personal view, do not like Netanyahu or his wife. It's just a gut reaction that I have. They just don't like the guy. They don't like a whole bunch of things about him. I mean, the newspapers exaggerated something, but there may be something there that they exaggerated. They didn't vote for Netanyahu. They voted because they voted for the characteristics of someone who's going to stand tall, who's going to stand strong, and with all of the criticism of Netanyahu going to Congress, for some of those people who maybe some people think they're simpletons, or that they're not that bright, they look at Netanyahu going to Congress as a person who stands strong. They look at Netanyahu as a person who says, at a moment of weakness maybe, during the election for political reasons, all of a sudden I don't believe in a two-state solution, okay? I mean, he's going to come back and say he believes in a two-state solution now, okay, in the very near future, if he didn't do so already today, okay? He'll say, I was misinterpreted. I was misinterpreted. I didn't mean there's no two-state solution. He said today, I meant that with the kind of partner that we have over there, we can't have a two-state solution. Doesn't mean that I don't believe that if we have a different partner, we can't have a two-state solution. It's all a matter of philosophizing. But during the campaign, he said what he said. And during the campaign, he said about Iran what he said. And during the campaign, he said about the Hamas and Hezbollah what he said. And so their people said to themselves, okay, what am I voting for here? Okay? I mean, if the country is overrun by rockets, and if we have another intifada here, and there isn't a strong person, okay, even if apartments are cheaper, okay, we might not be alive, okay, or something like this. Now, it sounds superficial, okay, and it sounds dumb, okay, but this is part of my analysis on why someone looked at a Netanyahu characteristic, even though they might not like him, and voted for him, and didn't vote for Bushi and Tzippi, who maybe come out being, looking weaker, or coming out with the fact that Bushi's going to do 2 years and then Tzippi's going to do 2 years, okay? Maybe that's not a sign of strength, okay? And then Tzippi decided 12 hours before the election that now she's not going to do that. too little, too late maybe. All of Israel considered the Labour Party to be Bougie and Tzipi. So 12 hours before, when she said she's not going to do the, okay, so that's another thing. And last but not least, okay, now that this election is over, okay, I think that if Netanyahu is a wise man, okay, he's going to call Herzog. And even if he doesn't ask Herzog to be in the government itself, he's going to say to Herzog, look, you need to serve on all of these committees. You need to serve on a committee that's going to lower the price of housing in Israel. You need to serve on a committee which is going to lower the price of foodstuffs in Israel. You need to sit on a committee that cares about all of this and all of that. Netanyahu realizes now, I don't think he realized it before, he realizes it now, that he owes a debt of gratitude to the people in the periphery. He owes a debt of gratitude to the poor people of Israel, to the people who are of a lower socioeconomic level. So if Netanyahu now believes this, and he takes Kachlon along, and they take the land authority, and they take the Ministry of the Treasury, and they take someone like Shelley Ychimovitz of the Labour Party, who is a great, great parliamentarian, who cares about the poor, in my opinion, more than some other people in that party, okay? And if you take the best of the best, that's one thing that we could do. Another thing that maybe we should do is change the system of government, is come up with some sort of an agreement between Bougie, Herzog, and Netanyahu, that okay, no matter what happens, we're signing a pact. We're going to legislate a change in the system of government of Israel, so that maybe in the next election, we won't have such a huge balagan like there is now. Okay? We have more of a presidential system, and we have a prime minister, let's say, Professor Reichman, my president. He believed that the prime minister needs to be voted for a 4-year term. And that person can only be deposed if 75% of the Knesset votes against them, which basically guarantees the fact that you're going to have a prime minister for 4 years. You'll have a budget that you look at for 4 years. You'll have various things that you want to do for 4 years, because it's very difficult to continue like this.